success, that's when I have a problem with it. And that seems to be what it's doing right now. I mean, the professor said something earlier, about these guys with their stats. Right now a lot of people are talking about the fact that we don't have anyone in the Pro Bowl. And how Drew Brees' stats should have had him in the Pro Bowl. A couple of other guys on the defense, stats should have had him in the Pro Bowl. The only stat I'm concerned with the Saints is that this will be the fourth consecutive year that we have not had a winning season. Let's deal with that stat.
Right.
And then we can talk about all the other stuff. So when we have a winning season, we're back in the playoffs, we're back in Super Bowl contention, then you can act like a diva and anything else you want to do. But with what you're producing, just shut up and play the game.
Shut up and play the game. Yeah, I agree with it. Shut up and play the game, especially when you're losing, right, Coach? Yep. I mean, it's not really much you can say, but I threw this out to our Twitter followers online, and my question is this, and I want to ask Brendan and Diva this, right? When the national media, as well as people who are not Saints fans, look at the New Orleans Saints from the outside in, do they see a stats-driven team, or do they see a winning, wanting to win-driven team? Let's hear your thoughts there, Brendan.
Well, I think the biggest thing, and one of the biggest things, especially since we just talked about the Pro Bowl and we're bringing up stats and everything, is a ton of guys say Brees shouldn't be in the Pro Bowl because he throws the ball so much. If you look at his numbers over the course of the last however many years, he leads the league in pass attempts. In such areas like that, I think when you look at the outside media, and I have the privilege of spending a lot of my time outside of two cities in which we have division rivals in Charlotte and in Atlanta, a lot of these division opponent fans and people of media and people that aren't even Saints fans see the Saints as a sorry excuse for what they once were.
Oh, wow.
They see them as a sorry excuse for 2009, 2011, 2013. I mean, those teams that we remember as good Saints teams, or we look at 11 and 13 specifically and say the Saints probably should have went further in the playoffs than they did those years. But they see Brees as a guy who's washed up, who's just trying to pad his stats to try to help his Hall of Fame case. And they look at the rest of the offense and they go, look, I mean, you haven't had a running back run for 1,000 yards since Deuce McAllister. You throw the ball so much. Payton is just a washed-up play caller, which a lot of Saints fans actually see as well, at least see it that way. I think a lot of people, especially in the media now, kind of push the Saints aside. I mean, what a great point that was just brought up. The Saints haven't had a winning season in 4 years. They've kind of pushed the Saints aside to a team that's like, well, we're going to see stats out of Drew every year. Drew is like, a great fantasy quarterback for me, or whatever people want to say in that area. But the Saints aren't a team that we're going to look at as dangerous. The Saints aren't a team that we see as a threat. A lot of fans go through the schedules when they get released. And they go, oh, well, this should be a win, this should be a win, this should be a loss, etc. They look at the Saints and go, easy W if it's not in the Superdome. If it's in the Superdome, well, we might have a shootout, but easy W if we host the game. They don't see the Saints as a threat anymore. They see exactly what you said. You see the Saints as a team that's just padding up the stats and a couple guys you can grab on your fantasy team and be happy with. You even have guys like Matthew Berry that are so high on Mark Ingram for fantasy at the beginning of the year because they're like, oh, well, he's got Drew Brees. He'll catch 1 million passes out of the backfield. If you're in a PPR league, make sure you draft Mark Ingram in the first round. That's all the Saints are seen as. They're seen as a shadow of what they once were.
A shadow.
They're seen as a team that's just going to go and put up 1 million different statistical numbers outside of the one that matters, and that's wins.
Wow. A shadow of what they once were. Diva, are they a shadow? Or can we bring the shadows back? Or is it time for us to cast a new shadow?
That's all up to the players and your coaching staff on what they want to do. They have to set the tone and they have to set the tone at the beginning of the season on what they want to do and how they want everything to play out for themselves. And let's just say what it once was years back. You kind of don't see some of those same things. You don't see those practices, in the off season prior to practices start. You don't see that. You don't see that kind of effort anymore. So it's not, as fans, we can want, but it's not up to us. It's up to them. What do they want? And I'll say this: you were speaking about Mark Ingram and his blowout on Sunday. Well, that was because had he ran in that touchdown, he would have gotten. It was an incentive for his contract, so he lost out on $100,000. That's why he was upset.
Well, some people have said that wasn't true. Then you hear Payton say it wasn't true, and some other people, that's not true. We really don't know. We don't.
It was posted everywhere.
I know. We don't know really what's in those contracts, but it looked pretty. It looked like a guy was saying,
it was no big deal.
Yeah, it looked like a guy saying to me, like, I ain't get paid, man. Yeah, I am. Yeah. And he said some choice words that is not family friendly to Sean Payton. He sure did.
I read lips really well, and I saw what he said.
Yeah.
So it was it wasn't if it wasn't that big a deal and that wasn't the truth, then that wouldn't have been the reaction that you got. If it was just like, oh man, I really wanted to run that in, he would have just been like on the sideline. Well, oh man, I really wanted to run that in. And some of them words that we read wouldn't have been so visible. But there had to be some kind of truth to something because he wouldn't have wilded out the way he did. He lost out on something. We don't know what. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Still, we can't verify that. But that's something true. Was something wasn't quite right. Let's hear from Rev from the Who Dat Confessional. What's going on, Deuce? What's your
not
take?
Much. Y'all started talking about Ingram, so I had to get a word in.
Oh, you're hot. You're hot.
All right, I'll back off a little bit. Is that a little better?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, well, the whole rumor about the $100,000 was started by the Fox Sports media truck, and they got it way off. Every Saints beat writer has come out and said that it's not part of the contract. That's not true. They've talked to Ingram. They've talked to the staff. That's not in his contract. And I am sitting here wondering, for everybody, Twitter, Saints fans, why is everybody surprised? Ingram has done this exact same thing, that type of emotional outburst for 6 years. On the field and on the sidelines, he has done this consistently. This is not the first time this has happened. It's maybe the first time Fox News called him mouthing off dirty words. This ain't the first time it's happened. Everybody's getting all bent out of shape over this. I just don't see I don't understand why everybody's getting – I mean, I know that we're a losing team, so we got to find somebody to point the finger at. I just think this is getting a little bit ridiculous after the whole Payton trade stuff, which we got to hear every year, which we all know is not going to happen, and then the whole Brandon Cook situation. Now everybody jumping on Ingram. It's just getting a little too crazy for me.
Well, let me ask you this, Rev, and I'm going to ask this of you, Coach and Professor. You hear people say if there's not smoke, there's not a little bit of fire somewhere underneath that brush there. Something is not going well with that team, man. For him to, I can see a guy being emotional, Deuce, but I can also see a guy he's showing some sort of frustration about something. Something is not quite setting right with him. Now, if it's just him didn't want to share the ball with Hightower, okay, so that's something he's going to have to pray to God about, right, for his selfishness. But it's still, to me, something, it didn't look quite right. And I never, Coach, and I'm going to ask you this, I have never seen Coach Payton go over to a player and try to calm him down out of all the years he's been coach. Have you?
I can't remember off the top of my head that happened, even though we don't get to see everything that happens on the sideline. But he was, it looked like he was acting like in a grandfatherly, collegial manner to try to calm Mark down, and that instead of being confrontational,
right?
Which Payton is at his best when he's confrontational. I think what was unique about this particular outburst, and if you're talking about frustration, this is happening during a win. And it was obvious the Saints were going to win the football game. And they scored 48 points in the game. So frustration for what? I can understand if you're not playing well and you're at Tampa Bay and you don't think perhaps you're getting the ball enough or whatever, but you're just frustrated that the team is not moving the football. That's when outbursts come out, but not when things are going well. That indicates to me that there's a little more self-centeredness in that type of outburst than we have seen in the past. But Sean Payton being collegial in a situation like that is I think one of the unique aspects about what we've had the last 4 weeks, really.
Yeah, very, very. That was very surprising to me to see Sean Payton go up to anyone to try to calm them down. And
that's why you have assistant coaches, okay?
Right.
I get into it. I can guarantee you. In fact, we had a staff procedure. Not that anybody should copy this, but we had a staff procedure because it was the assistant coach, the positional coach's job, to get each player to play to the best of their ability from a technical sense, and it was my job to get after them and to push them to the point of them being able to perform at their best. And like I mentioned before, there would be more than one occasion where a player would start, he felt he was backed in a corner and would lash out off the field. If it was during practice, I'd throw him off the field. And sometimes they'd take off their helmet and they'd throw it down and they go storming off. And the assistant coach knew, give him a couple of minutes. I got to go get him.
Right.
It was his job to go find the player and calm him down and then bring him back to me, and then we'd hash out whatever differences there were. We'd hug and move on.
Right.
It's weird to me that the head coach is going over there being the grandfather and not the position coach.
Interesting. Good way of looking at it. Well, Deuce, last night on Who Dat Confessional, you, Brian, you guys had a very spirited conversation. But the one thing that came out of your conversation I really liked, and may set us up for this Tampa Bay game in the Superdome, is that you said, would you rather have a angry Mark Ingram on the field? And I think that may bode well, and we may see a whole lot of Mark Ingram coming this Saturday.
Well, I think definitely. I mean, let's be real. I mean, I'm as much of an Ingram defender or apologist or whatever you want to call it as anybody else. I'm always quoting his stats. I'm happy when he does good, that thing. But let's also not lie to ourselves. There are two very different and contrasting Mark Ingrams that might show up any given day for the Saints. And that is about a 3-yard per carry, fall down as soon as he's touched Mark Ingram, not very emphatic, not very emotional when he plays. And then there's the pound the ground when I don't get that extra 2 yards or I don't break it away for a touchdown Mark Ingram, who's extremely vocal on the field. So if that is the part of the Ingram, I see Ingram. I've gotten to talk to that guy a lot. He's one of the Saints player I've had the most communication with. I'm able to speak to him semi-often, especially compared to the other players. To me, that's just part of his personality. He felt he deserved to score the touchdown. He wanted an opportunity to do it. That's why the outburst. And I'd rather have that Ingram, angry Ingram, who runs 4 or 5, right now 5 yards a carry or more on my field, than Ingram who is just there to collect a paycheck and play the game. And that Ingram's not bad, but that Ingram isn't what we draft in the first round for. And maybe it took Tim Hightower to light that fire and get him that competitive notion. I just don't want him to lose it. because I want that to carry on to next year, hopefully throughout the rest of the season, and maybe he gets his 1,000 yards. But that's what I'd rather have. I want to have angry Ingram, not complacent Ingram.
Okay.
Well, if you want Ingram